It's going to be a busy day here at the NovaCare Complex. We're glad that you're along for the ride. Welcome to Eagles Draft Central, presented by Dietz and Watson. I'm Chris McPherson, alongside Eagles insider Dave Spadaro. We have a player to talk about. After trading out of the first round on Thursday night, the Eagles were aggressive, moving up from 52 to 49th overall to select Dallas Goedert, tight end out of South Dakota State, and leapfrogging the Cowboys in the process to get him, Dave.
Yeah, and whether or not the Cowboys were actually going to make that pick, they certainly have a need at the tight end position. The Eagles targeted Goedert. They went up, they got him, and they project him fitting into this offense very nicely as a second tight end, a pairing with Zach Ertz. Very athletic, catches the football extremely well. I spent some time with tight ends coach Justin Peele last night after the pick. We watched some film, and he couldn't be happier. And actually, when you watch Goedert from 2017, bothered by ankle injury, hamstring injury, more explosive in 2016 when he had a monster season at South Dakota State. He's somebody, Chris, who should come in here, make a relatively quick transition into the offense, and be a part of the thing that the Eagles got going on here with his offense in 2018.
What I love is the fact that the Eagles targeted Goedert, knowing that they were getting to a point in the draft where, look, they had traded back to try to accumulate more draft capital. They got the second-round pick in 2019 from the Baltimore Ravens. But still, with only 6 picks on draft day, it was important that the Eagles get a premier talent. So they cited Goedert. They went up and got their guy. And you mentioned, Dave, that he had the injury. Well, he was still an FCS All-American, still a finalist for the Walter Payton Award, still very productive, and he's a team captain on top of it. So someone who is very productive at the FCS level, 3 years as a starter, a leader who comes into his locker room to kind of keep the chemistry going on top of it. Just another addition. And it's great that we talk about the weapons for Carson Wentz, but it's really going to be imperative that Nick Foles and Nate Sudfeld, having 2 quality quarterbacks who are going to be working with him in the spring, they're going to really be the ones to get him ready if he's going to make an impact in 2018.
Yeah, I think this is a very natural transition for the Eagles, for Goedert, for the quarterbacks. We all expected that the Eagles would, at some point here in the draft, address the tight end position. They did it. Now they're set at that spot with the third man being Richard Rodgers, a couple of developmental players behind those 3 players. It's a really good room, Chris. The Eagles losing Brent Selleck, losing Trey Burton, and they restocked. That's what good front offices do.
Indeed. So Dallas Goedert will arrive in Philadelphia in a little bit. But first, let's go to our phone conversation with him last night, celebrating with family and friends in South Dakota, the newest tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas Goedert.
For those Eagles fans who are not familiar with you, Dallas, I know you've cited Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce as 2 players that you've really looked at, loved their games. I'm not sure if you've emulated them necessarily, but do you believe that some of the things you do compare to what those 2 do, albeit they've done it in the NFL and you're still getting here?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, to go there and have Zach Ertz in my meeting room and be able to be with him at practice every day and learn from him, who's one of the best in the NFL, that's, I mean, another dream come true, and really honored and excited to learn and play with him.
Dallas, just how surreal is it, someone coming from Britain, South Dakota, now arriving in Philadelphia as the newest member of the team?
It's crazy. Like I said before, I'm so excited for it. I'm excited to be in Philly, who has some of the best fans in the world. So just to bring my talents there, and I feel like I'm an exciting player to watch and bring a lot of energy to the game. So I feel like they're going to have a lot of fun with me.
Dallas, do you think it'll be a really tough transition? It'll be a long learning curve?
No, I don't think so. I think I'll be able to go there and have an impact right away.
That's good to hear.
Exactly.
And has this whole process really convinced you, if there were any doubts, that you have what it takes to excel at this level?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, to go 49th overall in the NFL draft, there's a few people that believe in me as well. So I'm thankful for the opportunity they gave me, and I plan on, working really hard and making a difference for the people that chose me.
Dallas, to wrap things up here, is it true that you are named after the Dallas Cowboys? Have to have a little fun here, being the NFC's rivals and all.
I was, and now I'm excited to beat them twice a year.
That's right. Now, to clear up the story, for those who don't know, his father was a Cowboys fan. His stepfather raised him as a Green Bay Packers fan. And now, of course, Dallas Goedert, the newest Philadelphia Eagle, and the biggest fan of the Eagles in South Dakota.
All right, that's new Eagles tight end Dallas Goedert. Now, to me, you might project that the backup tight end only plays 30 to 40% of the snaps, which would be a very important role in this offense. But you wonder, could the addition of a talent like Goddard allow the Eagles to have more two tight end sets?
Yeah, I mean, they've run him quite a bit of the time, and I think this gives the Eagles more flexibility in the offense. It's all about matchups. I mean, the Eagles at this point now have Goddard and Ertz, two very athletic tight ends who can split wide, who can move around the formation, who can get lined up on cornerbacks or slower linebackers or smaller safeties. This is very good for the Philadelphia Eagles in Doug Peterson's offense. I expect the Eagles to do some things today, and we'll talk about that a little later on, to add to the offense to create more versatility and better matchups.
You're throwing a tease out there.
I'll
Just
get to it a little later
something.
on. Yeah, we got something
Get
for
to
you.
that.
All right.
Well, first, we're going to welcome in the man. We talked with him last night, Coach John Stiegemeier from South Dakota State University. How was Dallas Goedert discovered, and how did he help transform him into the player he is today? Let's go to our interview from last night with Coach Stiegemeier. Pleased to be joined on the phone by the head coach at South Dakota State, who guided Dallas Goedert and turned him into a second-round pick, John Stiegemeier. Coach, congratulations on producing a second-round draft pick here. The first thing I want to ask you is, how did he land at your program? I read a story about a pastor reached out to you on the phone, and that kind of laid the groundwork for getting him to you?
Yeah, a guy named Pastor Carl Larson had coached with us a number of years ago, and he saw Dallas play in high school. We didn't know anything about Dallas, and he got us his name, and we contacted Britain High School and got some film, and then I watched him play basketball, and it kind of started up that way.
Coach, talk about the development you've seen from him over the course of his career. Because I can tell you, just from watching him from day one, from his junior season up until the end of this past year, you could see just how far he's come in certain areas of his game. Can you just talk about how you've seen him develop over the course of his career?
But it's been phenomenal. His work ethic has been off the charts. Obviously, he's gifted genetically, but there's so much more. His focus, his goals, and I think one of the top things in him is belief in himself. And so, all the credit goes to Dallas Goedert. He has been a phenomenal hard worker, great leader for us.
Coach, along those same lines, what kind of person, we've seen the numbers, we've seen the production that he had at the FCS level. What kind of person is the Philadelphia Eagles getting here in Dallas Goedert?
You're getting a guy that's confident, but not real. You're getting a guy that will stop and talk to a little person if they ask. He's in our program. When they get done with the game, we go in the locker room, we say a prayer, we talk a little bit. Our players go out. He'll stand on the field and sign autographs, at least in our program, and talk to kids and take pictures until they turn off the lights. So he's a great person. Just a leader in every way.
Coach, Dallas was a two-time All-American at the FCS level. He was a two-time finalist for the Walter Payton Award. What is it that set himself apart from some of the other players at his position across that level of competition on the field as you've watched him reach his full maturity now as a senior?
Well, I would say two things. His athletic ability for his size, I think, is special. And you recognize that obviously by drafting him, and then his hands are phenomenal. And I wish I could have played quarterback with him at tight end. You just get it close to him, and he would catch the ball. So, and then his confidence. I mean, he wanted the ball. He wanted to be moved around. We played him in so many different positions, and he just kept eating it up and helping us win football games.
Coach, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. Do you have a favorite Dallas Goedert story, whether it's something along the lines of in a key moment in a game that he demanded the ball, sort of what you just alluded to, or something behind the scenes that just kind of emphasizes the type of person that he is?
Well, I guess he was voted captain this year, and I sat down with the 6 captains. And in FCS football, if you're a top 8 seed, you get a bye in the first round. And I presented to the captains that should be one of our goals, top 8 seed. And he looked at me and he says, "Coach, I think you're wrong." And with all the respect in the world, he said, "I think we got to put down on paper top 2 seed." And that's it wasn't with arrogance, it wasn't with not being able to back it up, but that's the way he plays. He plays like a champion. So if you literally end up being a top 2 seed, they're predicting you're going to get to Frisco, Texas, and play in the championship.
Coach, let's dive into the X's and O's a little bit. From a football coaching perspective, and you have a player like Dallas Goedert, you pair him with a player like Zach Ertz, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. What kind of flexibility does that give Doug Peterson and this offensive coaching staff to be able to utilize 12 personnel, and what can that do, those 2 tight end sets, against defenses on a weekly basis?
Ideally, you can line up and be a little bit smash mouth because you got 2 tight ends, move them around, run, play, action, pass. And I still think that's the best play in football is play, action, pass. You can run the football and then just get mismatches out in space. So, and the other thing about Dallas, I don't know anything about NFL playbooks, but we asked a lot of Dallas Goedert in terms of plays and motions and formations, and he seldom made a mental error. So he's very smart football-wise.
Coach, what's it like for the FCS seeing Carson Wentz be a number 2 overall selection and play at an MVP type level this season, and now Dallas Goedert follows a couple of years later and is a second-round pick of the Eagles?
Well, I think there's good football players at every level. I cut my teeth in NAIA and did coach Division II, and so we don't have as many as FBS guys, but there's guys that, we preach pursue your dream, and that's the ultimate for any FCS guy to have what happened to Carson and what's happened to Dallas. Every year we boast about the number of FCS teams win, games they win, and so it's just it's a great level of football. We'll leave it at that.
Stiegelmeier, head coach of South Dakota State University, who guided Dallas Goedert to becoming a second-round pick of the Philadelphia Eagles. Coach, thank you very much for joining us here on Eagles Draft Central, presented by Dietz & Watson. Great stuff there from Coach Stiegelmeier. Now, Dave, as excited as we were to add a new tight end to the offensive mix, one of my favorite moments from last night was David Akers announcing the selection in front of the faithful there in Dallas, the frenzied Cowboys
loved
fans.
it. I was up at the draft room. Everybody, really, a lot of laughter and claps for David. So, David Akers, job well done, and thank you for trolling the Dallas Cowboys fans. They deserved it.
Indeed. Getting back at Drew Pearson for what he did in Philadelphia a year ago. So, day 3, 4 picks ahead for the Eagles. Very important day. We'll preview what lies ahead. But after this break here on Eagles Draft Central, presented by Dietz & Watson, we're going to go into the film room to see how Dallas Goedert fits into the offense. Eagles Draft Central is presented by Dietz & Watson, proud partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. As we welcome Dallas Goedert into the offense, one area where I'm excited to see him potentially flourish early on is in the red zone, because now you're adding Zach Ertz has the size there at 6'5", Goedert is 6'5", you have Alshon, Mac Hollins, a lot of size to make it easy for Carson Wentz to get the ball in there.
Yeah, and a running game that is punishing Ajayi and Corey Clement have shown they have an ability to gain tough yardage inside. So it is all really set up very nicely. You know, Trey Burton, as much as we love Trey Burton, and total respect to Trey Burton.
Philly special, come on now.
Not drafted, became a tight end in the NFL after a jack-of-all-trades career at the University of Florida. In Goddard, the Eagles now replace Selleck in his size and Burton in his speed all in one package with Goddard. So as we look at Goddard, you're really going to like what you see. And remember, 2016, a better year than 2017 for a dominating player.
2017, still very, good. Numbers,
outstanding.
by the way. All right, so how will he be utilized in this offense? Fran Duffy and Greg Cosell are going to take us inside the film room to not only break down plays of Goddard, but showcase some highlights from the Eagles and see where he might be fit into this offense. Let's check it out.
Well, thank you, Chris and Dave and Greg. Let's take a look now at Dallas Goedert, because he's a player that you and I both liked on film, one of the best tight ends in this class. When you did your full evaluation on him this spring, what were some of the biggest takeaways from watching his film?
Two things really stood out to me, Fran. One, and this might sound like it's not a big deal because nobody thinks about it, but he catches the ball exceptionally well. He caught everything. He caught the ball snatching it away from his body. He made difficult catches, great body control to make tough catches. So he caught the ball really, really well. And I think for a tight end, that is so critical because they make a lot of catches in traffic. Sure. That's number one. And number two, his size. And make no mistake, size is a trait, particularly for a tight end. He weighed 256 pounds at the combine. My guess is once he gets into the Eagles weight room and NFL weight room, he'll gain more weight, but in a better way. I bet he could become a 265 pound tight end with better movement. And I think the Eagles are known for how strong their weight room is and their weight department, you know, that department here. So I think that those two things, his ability to catch the football and his size, just jumped off the film.
I would agree. To me, he was such a beast at the catch point, and that's what I think has drawn some of those comparisons to some of the best tight ends in the NFL, to a Zach Ertz, to a Travis Kelce, to a Rob Gronkowski in some ways.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, again, people might be saying, wow, but the thing about Goddard is he's so big and he catches the ball, and you know, you don't have to run away from people. He's not going to run away from people. He doesn't have what you'd call elite athleticism, although he's a good athlete, but he's not at the highest level of tight ends that are in the NFL now. But the thing is, that size and that ability to use his body, and you said catch the ball at the moment of truth, so to speak, there were times that if you really like Goddard and you think 3, 4, 5 years down the road, there's a little bit of Gronkowski in the way he plays.
And Joe Douglas talked about when you look at prospects at a lower level of competition, one of the things you're looking for is them to dominate that level of competition. That's something he absolutely did at this level of competition, at the FCS level. Here's Dallas Goedert, and he's coming in motion here, and he's going to run a vertical route down the field. It's going to be a little wheel route. And just talk about what you're seeing here, what you like from this.
This was a play I noticed against Northern Iowa, and you notice it's the deceptive quickness. It's kind of a delayed wheel route, a delayed vertical route. And what you notice, again, he's not an explosive athlete. You know, when you think of the Travis Kelce's of the world, he doesn't quite move like that. But this is the kind of thing, because of his size, you watch him run here, and boom, just right there, there's a little bit of burst, and that's all you need. And notice that the defender does not catch him. So he maintains that separation once he had that short area burst, and he's very good. You know, run after catch, he's an odd kind of guy. I mean, he's not... Again, you don't look at him as explosive. He's almost kind of a sidestepper. He's not really fluid, but there's something to him with run after catch.
So, Greg, I think one of the big complaints from Eagles fans is, why would you draft a tight end? Why would you trade up for a tight end when you've got Zach Ertz already? So let's talk about how he's going to fit in this offense and what it means to have another guy with his skill set.
You and I both know, we talked about this so many times throughout the 2017 season, of how important multiple tight end sets are to the Eagles offense, whether it's 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends, and it's absolutely critical. It's a major part of what the Eagles do, and they needed to replace Brent Selleck, and that's why they drafted Goddard. And we see the use of multiple tight ends in the field, particularly in the red zone. It's such an important part of what the Eagles do.
So really, when you look at multiple tight end sets, they really want to try and accomplish two things. Number one, you're going to try and create some favorable matchups for those players. We saw that with Ertz, Selleck, and Trey Burton last year. You're going to see it with Dallas Goedert this year. And then also to help make defenses predictable in terms of the way they play coverage. So we've got two different examples of that here. Tell us what you're seeing here against Arizona.
How many times in the red zone did we see the Eagles line up in specific formations? Here, it's 3 tight ends, all tight to the formation to one side, because they want to create a matchup. We saw this so much with Zach Ertz. Here's what they do with Zach Ertz. He's actually in the middle right here, and they want him matched up on the safety. It was Tyven Branch. And they did such a good job all season long with these kinds of things. As you let this run, they get the matchup they want. As I said, this happens to be in the red zone. There you get the matchup, and you get a touchdown. The Eagles were so good at this. Doug Peterson was so good at drawing this kind of stuff up. They love those multiple tight end sets, not just in the red zone, where it was real effective, but also in the field.
Yeah, and that's
another great example.
Yep.
And now you see a totally different formation. Here's an empty set just outside the red zone, okay? You have all 3 tight ends to one side of the field. Very often when you line up an empty, you're going to get a predictable coverage based on your opponent. And here you're going to get cover 2. So they know this. I mean, this is film study based. So the key thing here, they're not going to throw to one of the tight ends, but it's the formation and the personnel package with 3 tight ends that sets this up. So you're going to get cover 2. You know you're going to get an outside void, sort of the turkey hole shot, as they say in cover 2, and that's what you get right here. So again, it's the use of multiple tight ends and multiple formation looks with different receiver distributions and locations, and it sets up your passing game really, really well. So Dallas Goedert is a critical piece. How many snaps he plays, we don't know that. Obviously, there's no player comes into the NFL as a finished product. There's a lot for Goedert to learn. But he was drafted specifically because they needed that second tight end. It's so important to what they do.
Yeah, and such a talented player. To me, could you have made the argument you could have waited a little bit later? You wouldn't have gotten a player of his
Those arguments mean absolutely nothing to me because you don't know that.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun to watch Dallas Goedert here in Philadelphia paired with Zach Ertz in this Doug Peterson offense. Guys, I think both of us are excited.
Great stuff as always from Fran and Greg, and hopefully we'll have some more film breakdowns of other draft prospects, because this is not all just about Dallas Goedert. There are 4 picks ahead, and we're going to preview and explain why they're so important right after these messages here on Eagles Draft Central, presented by Dietz and Watson. All right, the third day of the NFL draft is almost here. Now, Dallas Goedert will get all the headlines. He'll be the one we're all focused on throughout the OTs and training camp. But Dave, day 3 of the NFL draft, so important in terms of building up the core of the roster.
No question, and there is a lot of talent still on the board. We've seen the Eagles in the past come up with some very key picks, and they've acquired some picks, players selected on day 3. We see the list here. All are key contributors to the Eagles' Super Bowl 52 victory. So there is talent in them Thar Hills. And I think it's also important to look beyond these 4 picks, Chris, because let's take into account some of the things that have happened in this draft so far. The Eagles moved out of round 1, and that means that they have saved money under the salary cap. They don't pay a first-round draft pick. They move back 20 spots in round 2. So what do they do with that extra saved cap money that would normally have gone to their rookie pool? Well, what you normally see happen on this day is teams looking through one more time what players are available in the market that you can sign, that you can bring back. What needs do the Eagles have? We've talked about this. Backup safety. Well, there are players still out there. Corey Graham, for example, still out there. Eagles looking to get somebody who can move around the offense. Is there a player in the draft? Is it Donnell Pumphrey? Who's the punt returner this year? Maybe the Eagles do something there. Offensive line. Is there a draft developmental kind of player here for that? And then the linebacker position, Chris, which I still think the Eagles will address in day 3.
Well, look at what the Eagles did after the draft last year. LeGarrette Blount was added after the draft in May. So, again, the Eagles will kind of reassess the roster and say, what do they have to fill?
Oh, yeah, and listen, we all saw it last year. All the trades, the Jernigans, the Darbys, the Blunts, the Ajayi trade, all the way to Brian Brayman coming in, who made a big play late in the Super Bowl. So the roster is far from complete. Howie Roseman's always working it. I'm just saying that today is more than these 4 draft picks. And this is where you really find out the personnel departments who've really, really done their work. This is where your bread is buttered. Indeed.
The question is going to be philosophically, do you target players who have specific, exceptional talents where if you're taking an edge rusher, someone who flies off the edge but maybe he's not as good against the run, or do you take a wide receiver who's got the size, the hands, but maybe doesn't run the fastest 40 time?
Right.
That's what's fascinating about today, to see what each team covets in the prospects.
The characteristics, a characteristic that sticks out for you, that is what you are looking for on day 3. And then you work to develop those players. You've got coaches in here, and the 3-pronged approach here is draft, develop, and retain. And the Eagles have done that extremely well the last few seasons. And that's why this roster is in such stable shape now and moving forward. The salary cap in good position. Eagles have retained a lot of flexibility.
You mentioned the homework that the teams have to do ahead of the draft. I think about Corey Clement, who came in. He was a local pro day guy. He knew Dom DeSandro, the security director here for the Eagles. So the Eagles knew what they were getting when they brought him in the building. And they understood that, he's not the fastest back. He wasn't asked to pass protect or catch the ball out of the backfield at Wisconsin. But Deuce Staley felt that he could develop those traits, that he could coach them up. And look what we see, a historic Super Bowl performance, 4 catches, 100 yards. And, even from the jump, though, he was competing for playing time. He was pushing Donnell Pumphrey. He made the opening kickoff touchdown against Washington. He just set the tone right off the bat that even though he wasn't drafted, he was going to find his way onto an NFL team.
Yeah, look, the Eagles understand that this roster is not complete. You got to still find depth, players to develop, and potentially, keep in mind, add veterans to the mix, retain veterans, keep building the roster.
So we're going to have a lot of fun here today.
It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day.
It's going to be a phenomenal day. Yeah. We're going to, after every pick, after every move, we're going to be live here on Eagles Draft Central presented by Dietz and Watson. You're going to get to spend a lot of time with the second-round pick, Dallas Goedert,
I'm
today.
I'm going to go to the airport, pick him up, do a little piece on Facebook Live with Dallas Goedert, and have a really good time with him and get to know him. And he certainly seemed like he had a good personality last night. We'll see how he is after, I'm sure, very few hours of sleep.
A 6-foot unicycle, is that correct?
6-foot unicycle, yeah. I don't think he's bringing it today, though.
I would certainly hope he's not bringing it. We can put that on the shelf for a little while. So for everyone out there, make sure to stay tuned to PhiladelphiaEagles.com, the Eagles app, and our social media channels for complete coverage all day long. So for Dave Spadaro, I'm Chris McPherson. You've been watching Eagles Draft Central presented by Dietz and Watson. We'll see you in a little bit.